going to record. Hello, Jay Williams here, and welcome to another one of my very special interview series. And today I have a very special guest with me. It's the wonderful Tasha Hughes coming live from Australia. Tasha, how are you doing?
Hi Jay, how you going? I'm well, thank you.
I'm great. It's finally nice to see some beautiful weather here in the UK. It's actually on the spin, I think. It's like, you know, that dark and gloomy winter that we have here in the UK. And then we're coming out and everybody starts to come alive. People start to smile and everyone starts going to the gym because they're like, summer is coming. It's time to work on the beach body.
Love it.
Yeah, for sure. So obviously today we're going to jump into this. We're going to start talking about yourself, what you do, how you actually help people. And we're going to get into the nitty gritty of relationships and helping people to see relationships and behaviors from different perspectives, which I'm always fascinated by, because especially the book Men Are From Venus. No, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus.
From Venus.
I'm always fascinated by that because sometimes I look at my partner in particular and I'm like, why is she doing that? And then she's always like, why is he doing that? And then she's always like, why does he think that? Or why do I think that? So I think this is going to be a great topic to actually talk about today. And I think people are going to absolutely love it. So first of all, let's get to know Tasha Hughes. Who is Tasha Hughes? How did you get into doing what you're doing? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so I'm Tasha. I'm from Bunbury, Western Australia, over in Australia. And I help women connect with their partners on a deeper level. And I also help them nut out what they really want in a relationship and what's important to them. So really breaking it down, who they are and what they want, and how they can relate to their partner, and seeing it from a guy's perspective and really get it and to communicate with them without heated, escalated arguments as well. So my background is domestic violence. So I've broken through from darkness to seeing light at the end of the tunnel, and you actually look at life in a completely different perspective when you've been down that path. And so I want to share with other women, you know, that they can create the love that they desire and know their self-worth. And that's in a nutshell, part of my journey.
So obviously you mentioned a little bit of the domestic violence side of things, and you were in one of those specific relationships. Can you talk a little bit more about, not so much about what happened, because we don't want to dive too much into that, but, you know, how you come out of that, and, you know, what did life look like after you come out of that type of relationship?
Okay, so I think a lot of it boils down to self-worth and knowing that you're good enough. Into it is a fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, and fear of being alone. But when you come to realize that things are better without, like life is better without being in that situation, your mind shift starts to change, and so does your self-worth. So now I look back on my situation and I say to myself, you know what, I wouldn't change my experiences or bad choices, because it's made me the woman I am today. It's given me the knowledge that I have today. It's given me the power and the knowledge and the empathy that I can show other women and demonstrate as well. So I'm actually really, it's bad, but in a sense it's also good, because it's made me the person I am today and really nutting out my self-worth.
You still there?
Really, yeah.
Dropped out a little bit.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's it's really interesting, and you mentioned self-worth, and I know it's something that you come across a lot in your line of work, and I know from personal experience, I've definitely suffered from not feeling good enough, and that's had massive impact on both myself and my personal relationships in my life. And talk to me about self-worth, and what was your issue with self-worth, and how you pulled yourself out of that?
Okay, so my issue with self-worth was a fear of rejection and abandonment, like not being good enough. Any guy's better, any guy will do. It's better than being alone and walking alone on my own path. So once I come to be okay with being myself and being on my own, that's when I clicked and realized that, no, I'm not going to settle for any guy will do, because I know I deserve to be treated like a decent person. I know I deserve to have a good man in my life. So regardless of choosing second best or he'll just do, I've actually come to terms of being okay and comfortable with just being single. That's the power around being single, is once you're okay with yourself and you're comfortable within yourself and your self-worth, you do really start to gel what you want and what you're looking for a guy, and what relationships actually really mean to you once you develop that self-worth and self-worthiness. And knowing, I speak a lot about this, knowing that you are good enough and believing it. Like, it's okay to say to someone you are good enough, or to your partner you are good enough, but they really need to believe it themselves as well. That's a really important aspect of believing that you're good enough.
So I'm really interested, because we talk about coming out of it, but like how did you even begin that process of feeling good enough? Because I know, like, my girlfriend used to say to me, "Oh, you're sexy, you're so sexy," she used to say to me. And but because I didn't feel like good enough myself, I didn't believe it. And I really struggled to take compliments, and I never really knew how to pull myself out of that. And that's one of the reasons, like, I align with you guys so much, is because coaches helped me through that. So for you, how did you even begin that process of feeling good enough? Because saying it every day, I'm good enough, I'm good enough, I'm good enough, I believe it only gets you so far. I think you have to do the deep work, in my experience.
Yep.
But I'm interested to hear what your path was to actually feeling good enough.
Embodying it, like having that self-confidence to embodying it, to embody being good enough, like finding your purpose and taking on board what you're passionate about, like what's really important to you. What is it that you want to achieve in life? What are your goals? So once I started embedding that I'm good enough and I can really do anything I put my mind to it, and you tend to have that feeling inside yourself, that boost of confidence. There's something sexy and attractive about confident men, and there's something sexy and attractive about confident women. Like, it's just energizing, it's attractive, it's being authentic and real, I guess. You're not manipulating or pretending to be somebody, you're not just to please other people. That's how I see it on my personal level now as well.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. The confidence thing about it's so sexy, it's so attractive, both in men and women, to someone who's confident, who just oozes like who they are, and the way they show up in a room, in their life, in their relationships, is like 100% authentically themselves. And like I remember, I'll share a little story. When I first met my girlfriend, she oozed like self-expression, confidence. She was such a great dancer, and I was like, this is like a real turn on for me. This is like this confidence, this just embracing everything you are and just going, here I am, world, like, and I'm gonna rock this shit kind of attitude. And I love that. And it's really good that you mention confidence, because it is a really attractive trait. So yeah, that's really cool. So
that is really cool.
Tasha, I'd love to know, obviously, like, you work with a lot of people in relationships. Is it primarily women you work with, or do you work with men and women?
It is actually primarily women, but having said that, I have had men reach out to me as well, and saying to me, God, it's so great to see a woman not being afraid to demonstrate or share men's perspectives. Like, not being afraid. I'm not afraid to put it out there, like, this is how a guy sees things. And that's one thing I've learned too, is being able to really get and see things from a man's perspective, like how my own behaviour in relationships actually affected the guys that I was with too. So, a lot of men have reached out to me, but my primary work is with women.
I'm interested in this piece.
It feels nice that guys have reached out to me and said it's really great to see a woman that's confident and wants to share guys' perspectives and really nut out the pinpoints on what it means for men. Like how it's not easy to just be open and vulnerable for men. They don't communicate the way us women do.
Yeah, that's very true.
How they need, and a lot of women say to me, well, why can't he just talk to me, Tasha? I just want to know what he wants in a relationship. I just want him to talk to me. And I said, well, first things first, men need to feel safe before they'll be vulnerable with a woman. They need to know that what you say is going to be sacred, and it's not going to be shared to all the mums at school, and it's not going to be shared to social media. It's got to feel safe for him to unlock that vulnerability as well. And they're like, oh, I said, yeah, well, men and women don't communicate the same way. That's how it is. The men are naturally shielded with their emotions, and I'm not talking temper tantrums or learnt behaviours. I mean real, true, deep, vulnerable emotions. They're naturally guarded, so they'll either A, joke about it or lie about it.
The mask, right?
The mask, the masculine energy, the distraction, because it's a fear of inadequacy. Men have a deep fear of inadequacy, and they also fear being controlled and losing their freedom. When they come into a relationship, they think, well, and I've even had this said to me, a guy said to me, Tasha, why is it that women always want to control a guy when they're in a relationship? Can't we just still be ourselves? And they always seem to push for commitment all the time. What is it with women that want to push with commitment? And I said to this guy, I said, listen, it's not actually about the man. That has a lot to do with her feeling secure. Women will put on the commitment button because it's their way of feeling secure. They know where the relationship's going. They know what to expect. Yes, he's with me. He's committed. I don't need to worry about other women. Whereas a guy, that actually feels like he's being chased or suffocated or smothered. So I said to I said, well, that's why women push for commitment, rather than the aspect of men like to just take it baby steps and really slow it down and see where it goes. So AKA focus on building the connection and the bond rather than pushing for commitment.
Yeah, there's also a question that comes up quite a lot, and I'm sure it happens to you, is like in a relationship, not just the commitment side of things, but trying to change people, or you might say trying to rush them into wanting something that they don't. Is that something you see quite a lot of?
Yes, absolutely, Jay. I hear a lot of rushing into things head over heels without taking the time to really slow it down and get to know each other. I know couples who dated quietly for a whole 12 months before even making it official that they were together. Like, it's not a rush. So I hear a lot of, commitment, and rush into everything, rather than taking the time to get to know each other and just bring a sense of curiosity and really just slowing it down. When you can adapt that takes a ridiculous amount of pressure off of a guy. And even yourself, because you're not constantly thinking as a female, well, what is going to happen next? Is he going to contact me tomorrow? What if? Is another thing that I hear a lot of as well.
And I get, like, how do you slow it down to that then? So clearly you mentioned 12 months. I'm a big believer that you really need to know someone for 18 months. Just really start to know them, as you start to come out of what people like to call the romantic period. That's when you really get to know people. Like
the honeymoon phase.
Yeah, the honeymoon phase. Like, how do you really like slow it down? Is it about how you communicate in the beginning, agreements in the relationship? What does that look like?
So what that would look like is being in the present. Like, NLP world, they talk about present state acceptance. That's being in the here and now. Like slowing it down and being curious to see where things go, taking the time to get to know each other, building good memories, getting to know what each other likes. Like, what are your interests? What are your values? A big question is, what are your values? What do you value in life? What are your goals? What is your vision? What do you want to achieve in life? And really breaking it down and taking the time to do that, of exploring who this person is that you want to be in a relationship with. or that you actually, even if it's just dating, like really take the time to get to know the person. And I'm a firm believer that even in a relationship, you can never stop learning about your partner. Like there's always something that they want to do, or always something that's new to them that they want to share with. So I do definitely believe that you can never stop learning about your partner, even if you're just slowing things right down. Because I'll share with you an experience that I've had in the past. Every relationship I've been in, I've actually just rushed into it head over heels. You know, it's just been moved on so quickly that it got to a point where it's like, hey, this isn't what I signed up for. This isn't who I thought he was. This is not the side that I saw. And because of that, you know, rushing into things, not taking the time and slowing it down to really get to know this person. Is he a charming manipulator? Is he just telling me things that I want to hear? Hence he was. And then the opposite personality came out, the real guy. Whereas I believe if you're honest right from the start, and again, slowing things right down, that cycle of being in abusive relationships actually starts to break, because you can see through that clearly.
Yeah, for sure. It's rushing. I think it's easy to get blinded by the excitement, the adventure that is a new relationship, and kind of having that level of awareness to kind of just stop yourself and go, hang on, like, what's going on here? You know, is this really what I want? And I want to move on to a question which I have, and I think we're kind of going down this direction already, I feel. But, like, what are some of the most common mistakes you see people make when getting into a relationship? I'd say that one of them is probably rushing in and trying to
rushing
move it forward too fast, but I'll let you elaborate on that a little bit.
Okay, so one of the common mistakes people make is, for women, it's trying to pretend to be someone you're not in order to please a guy. So rather than putting on this interpretation of who he or you think he wants you to be, or saying things that you think he wants to hear, that can be interpreted as you being manipulative or having a hidden agenda, rather than bringing out your real self right from the start. So there's that mask of, you know, saying something or being someone that you think he wants you to be in order to please him, as opposed to being your genuine true self and sticking by your values as well. And a lot of women, and myself included, that I've done this in the past, is they tend to kick their boundaries and their values to the curb in order to please a guy. And that's when you lose your self-worth, and this is so true. That is also when a guy will start to not respect you, because you're not respecting yourself, you're not respecting your values and your boundaries and what's important to you. So once you start kicking them to the curb and they're not important, you're disrespecting yourself. And then he ends up starts to disrespecting you as well, because he's got nothing to push off to say, oh, okay, I've overstepped the mark. There's nothing for him to be challenged, because you've kicked your values and your boundaries to the curb to please him. So he's got nothing to bounce back off of. Like, oh, okay, right, well, I've said something to upset her, or that doesn't sit well with her. I need to, you know, change my tonality a bit. I'm really pushing the limits here. So when there's nothing there, then there's nothing there to respect, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
that's
for
a bit
sure.
of a ramble, but that's a roundabout way of explaining it.
So the big picture, the big problem that people do is they lose themselves and lose their identity and who they really are in sacrifice for someone else. Whereas I can definitely relate to this more than you know, Tasha. You know, like, I've been someone that I wasn't for a long, long time in multiple different relationships, not just in relationships with girlfriends, but with my family and with my friends. And when you start to lose who you are, you find yourself wearing multiple different masks and it's stressful, and it feels like there's a misalignment within you, and it never leads down a very positive path, or it never leads to a very happy ending in my experience.
It doesn't.
And I'll say that, and I talk about my relationship quite a lot with my girlfriend Vicky now, because when I said before about when I met her, she was like this powerhouse and she shot me down straight away. I respected that. And in the relationship that I'm in now, one of the things I made a conscious choice to do was I'm going to show up as me no matter what. This flirtatious, quite confident guy. I like to have fun. I like to go and spend time with my friends. I like sport. I like, personal growth, invest in myself, doing out there stuff. And this is me. And if somebody comes along who is willing to accept this, what this is, then it's an awesome fit. And that's exactly what happened in my relationship. And it's a great lesson, I feel, that people can learn a lot from, because I'm guessing, Tasha, that people fear that they're going to get old alone and not be able to find the right one, the person. And so they sacrifice in order to try and compensate for that and to get that. Is that fairly true or accurate?
That's fairly true and accurate, Jay. Totally on the mark. Actually, very, very true and accurate. They compromise it, their self-identity, out of fear of being alone and rejection. I'm going to grow old and lonely, rather than saying, this is me, this is who I am. Yes, I'm bright and vibrant and out there, and I talk a lot, and I sometimes ramble, but that's just me. Like that's how I am. And yes, I see things on different perspectives. I've actually always been able to do that, see things on both sides of the fence, so to speak. And that's just how I am. And I've learned not to change that. In a negative aspect, I mean to try, police somebody else.
Perspectives is just, it's so important, and understanding different people's perspective. I know a lot of people in a relationship, they only have their view and they need to be right all of the time. And again, I can relate to this. I've done a lot of work on myself, right? And this is what we're talking about, doing work on yourself. But, there's a lot of people out there who dominate in a relationship because they need to be right. And they're not willing to listen in the relationship, and they think that communication is just this, talking all the time.
No.
Communication, rather, like my girlfriend's dad always says, he's not religious, but God give you two of these and one of these. Just shut the fuck up and start listening. And it's so true in a relationship, like people needing to be right all of the time and dominating, and not actually listening.
No. And that's a lot of that boils down to the ego. I have to be right. I'm right. That's an egotistical thing. And they're choosing not to listen and really articulate what their partner's trying to say without being judgmental, and really acknowledging, where their partner's coming from and what's hurt them and what their experience is. So they tend to try and be right all the time, as, the ego's talking and them domineering, and indirectly saying to their partner, well, your thoughts and feelings aren't important. Is what they're indirectly saying without even consciously realizing it. The other person takes it on board. Okay, so what I think and feel and what's important to me isn't important to you.
It's like 7% of our communication is words, right?
Yeah, and 90% of it is actually listening, like really listening to what they're saying.
And
it's hard to do. It's not something that can be adapted so easily unless you've done, like you and myself, heaps of personal work on being able to articulate that. It's not easy to do, because a lot of women tend to talk about different things at once, whereas men, it's one topic at a time. It's one thing at a time.
No multitasking over here.
It's not 10 things at once. It's one gets to the point at a time, and that's how men communicate. But yeah, listening is a big key in it. A big part of, communicating healthily with your partner is being able to listen to what they're saying. Shut this freaking thing and use these. And just listen to how he's feeling and what he's wanting, without making everything about you. That's another thing. People tend to make everything about them when they're in a relationship. It's not like that. It's a two-way thing. It's not all about you and what you think and want and believe is right. It's both parties come together and be able to learn and grow in their own time.
It's so true.
Well, and
I always say, if you ever...
comes out.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. That's when a toxic relationship starts, when you choose and refuse not to listen to your partner and how they feel and what they're wanting and what their values are. That's when the toxicness really starts to kick in, because you're not respecting them. You're not being loyal to them because you're choosing not to listen. You're making everything about you, and it's essentially not necessarily always about you.
So I've got a question. How do, because I want to give people some actionables. We're talking about listening and being able to not be right all the time. How do you set that up? Because clearly you're going to have to give the other person permission to actually speak openly and honestly while you sit back and take it all. How do you set that up, or how would you recommend people set that up or communicate that with one another?
Okay, so if you're wanting to communicate with a guy, say to him, is now a good time to talk, rather than, honey, we need to talk. That's like, yikes, I'm in the doghouse again, or something's happening. Like,
oh no,
light bulb, red flags pop up. So it's much easier for a guy and less stressful if you were to say, is now a good time to talk? Or would you be able to let me know when a good time is to talk? So then he can say yes or no without getting offended and switch his focus as well. So it's very important to give a man space to switch focus. That's one invitation. Or if he's home, you can say, I'd like to talk to you about something. Let me know when's a good time to talk. Ladies, do not bombard your partner no sooner he walks through the door, because it's not going to work. Allow him the time and give that invitation to say, well, let me know when's a good time to talk. And that's when you can articulate what you would like to bring to him. So it could be, I don't know, something's happened with the kids at school and you've been feeling offended by it, or he said something to you and you feel offended by it. Say, well, hey, listen, what you said to me really upset me, and part of me feels upset and hurt by it. So in saying that, you're not actually blaming him for his behaviour. You're just simply expressing how you're feeling. And so your partner isn't going to be able to get defensive or feel disrespected or agitated about it, because you're not blaming. There's no area for blaming there. Rather than said, you said this and now I feel like this and this is your fault and it's always up to you to do everything. That's not healthy. Or saying, part of me, or I felt this way, is actually not blaming. And then if he was to say to you, look, I need to express how I feel and what I'm wanting in relating to you, sit and just listen to what he's saying. It's like he's saying, I want to be with you, but I want things to slow down. I really need to take the time to get to know you and see that this is what I want. Or I'm not liking talking about a certain subject. I don't want to bring it up, or I don't feel comfortable bringing it up. Really hear what he is saying, and don't be his therapist or his coach. Really listen to what he's saying. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to bring it up. Respect that and leave it. He doesn't want fixing. Validation. It's validation. Understanding and respecting where he's at and what each other wants.
So something cropped into my mind then when you were saying about, this happened with the kids and you said this and it made me feel a certain way. What if a guy turns around and it's kind of like, we're not doing we talked about this, or don't be stupid, or like, how do you react to something like that? Because like I've seen that before. How do you deal with that? How do you map your way around that?
Okay, so
we're really testing you now, Tasha.
Yeah, no, this is good. That's good. Don't be stupid. It's like, well, I'm not being stupid. This is what's happened and this is how I feel. There's nothing being stupid about that. If you're not willing to listen, well, let's talk when you're ready to listen. Like, you're being clear with that bit of boundary, so it's not putting in an argument. Like, if you're not willing to listen, then let's talk when you're ready to listen. There's nothing being stupid about that. This is how I'm feeling. And this is what's happened.
There's also
cutting that off there before it escalates. Being aware of being able to cut that boundary off. So listen, if you're going to say I'm stupid, say I'm dumb, or I can't handle this, then we'll talk later. I'm not interested now if this is the way you're going to respond.
And if that's
because
a theme in the relationship,
the more you feed back into, you know, you can't blame me. Why did you say that? That wasn't fair. He's only going to feed that back because you're both sitting on the defense line rather than being clear about what the topic is at hand. And it's not productive at all. Once both people start getting on the defense line, then there's no point in the conversation because it turns into an escalated argument.
By fence line, you mean trying to be right, correct?
Yeah, and trying to be right as well. That's another thing. The egotistic, trying to be right. I'm always right. It's like, no, you're not listening to what I'm saying. You're making it about you.
I once heard a saying, I thought it was brilliant, very prominent to this point, and I always play about with it with my girlfriend when she's trying to be right. I always, and the saying went, there's no room for love when you're both trying to be right.
That's correct. Yeah.
And like, unless one of you is willing to give, and it has to be like this, not like this or like this, where one's always right and the other's always wrong, then there needs to be like this compromise in the middle, not that, but this. And when you give up the need to be right and you listen, there's things we've been talking about already, then you're able to move forward in the relationship. I always say to my girlfriend when she's trying to be right, I'm like, there's no room for love when you're both trying to be right. She tells me where to go. She's like, don't try that with me.
That's good. It's true. That's a really good analogy. Once you both stop trying to be right and you can meet in the middle, that's when things really start to change.
For sure.
For the better. Like you're not headbutting. You're meeting in the middle and you're compromising. You're able to communicate and compromise with each other. They're two bonus gold nuggets. Once you're able to communicate and compromise with each other and really listen, that's the bonus into it. The start of being able to communicate healthily and have invitations rather than expectations. Don't expect everything from your partner, rather than invite to talk about something, to share how you're feeling, to share your experience. So you're not expecting it, you're inviting it.
I want to touch on that some more. You just said a golden word, and I think it's brilliant. So we talked about communication and listening and how it's important to understand what each other wants. But expectation, this is like such a big, disgusting word.
Yes.
If you get this wrong, like people clearly either go into a relationship or behave in a certain way in a relationship, and they have expectations of the other person. But here's where it's brilliant, and my girlfriend does this, and we've talked about it, it's okay. They expect things, but they don't communicate them. And then they expect you to read their mind. And then when you don't do what they expected you to do, that you didn't get told to do or asked to do, then you're in the wrong. Here's what I want to explore. Expectation. What are your thoughts on it?
Rather than expecting your partner to guess, say what's on your mind. Be comfortable with saying what's on your mind rather than expecting your partner to guess, because there's not one thing men can't stand. They're not mind readers. No one's a mind reader. How am I supposed to know what she wants if she won't tell me? How am I supposed to know that she wants me to do the dishes if she doesn't simply ask? Rather than saying, well, I expect you to think and use your common sense and just do the dishes or get the milk or do whatever it is you're wanting. Don't expect him to guess. Say. So, hey, I would really like some help. Would you be able to do some more around the house for me, so it takes the pressure off me and the weight off me? I'm really busy or I've had a bad day. Then that's an invitation, not an expectation. So he's not going to go off into the lounge room or do whatever he wants to do, or the opposite way around. And then the partner gets annoyed and frustrated because they didn't just guess. They didn't, he should have known or she should have known. It's like, well, how's he supposed to know if you don't simply ask?
It's so true.
That's expectation, yeah. And one thing I will share with you that a lot of women do, I'm not saying everyone does it, and I could be completely wrong here as well, and I'm happy to be wrong. It's no right or wrong. Women tend to put men on their pedestal and compare them with their father. Like the most important man in their life, they'll say, no one can beat Dad. No man could ever match up to my dad, and that puts a ridiculous amount of pressure on a guy because he can sense that. Whether you're saying it or not, men can instinctively sense that. No matter what I do, dad's going to be better. No matter what I do, it's not going to be good enough, and that wears him down.
You just opened up a whole new can of worms right there. I want to know about this.
Like, I'm not saying all women do it, but it is known to happen, like in the relationship lifestyle. And a lot of coaches actually talk about this as well. A lot of relationship coaches talk about this, that women will tend to do that. Or men will flip the opposite, and no woman can match my mother. Particularly the mother or mummy's boys that don't want to grow up and take responsibility. So no woman could ever match mum.
So how do you deal with that?
I got frustrated because that happened in my very first serious relationship back in my 20s. Like, I ended up getting so frustrated that I said to my partner at the time, you know what? If you miss your mother so much, go back and live with her. Is exactly what I said to him. Because I got drained. Like, whatever I did wasn't good enough. I wasn't being able to be my real self because it wasn't good enough. Hence, I felt not good enough because I was always expected to meet up to mum's expectations, his mother's expectations. And that's tiring for me as a woman. So I could only imagine how tiring that is for a guy. Like, really?
I must admit, like in my past relationships, I've always expected women to meet a certain expectation of mine, so that because it was all tied into my self-worth issues, so that my dad would accept them. And if they weren't a certain standard or they didn't look after themselves, I had this whole act, and I learned this in the Landmark Forum. It was, I need to win and look good. So if my girlfriend's behaving in a certain way, or she's doing certain things and it doesn't meet my expectation of how she should behave, and that's going to annoy my dad, then they need to change that. And it was terrible for the relationship, I will add. But it's amazing how I had that expectation of how she should be when I hadn't done the work on myself at the time. So I didn't fully understand it, and I pushed my expectation on her. And that broke down the relationship as a result.
Because, like you said before, there's no level of connection, there's no compromising. It's just headstrong, I'm right, you have to be like this in order to fit in. Well, how would it be if you could just accept your man for who he is now? How would it be, guys, if you could just accept your woman for who she is now at the time, rather than expecting him or her to be some illusion of what you want? Why do that if you can't be with them and accept them for who they are today, as they are now, and allow them to grow into a better person in their own time? That is a big thing in relationships as well. So that's one thing to be, to be aware of, maybe, is, well, what can I see? How can I see him clearly now? How can I accept him? Who is he? Or for the guys, who is she? How can I accept her? What's she about? Really get curious around that, instead of having this delusion of what you want her or him to be.
I see.
Which is a takeaway that I wanted to add in there. Just creating a little bit of awareness. How have you been in relationships from the past, other than listening to our talk today? Have you been overcritical? Have you rushed into things head over heels without slowing things down and really seeing it from his perspective and getting curious to where the relationship's going? Have you been overcritical? Have you been masking yourself and projecting what you think you want in order to please him out of fear of being alone? Who is it that you are, and what is it that you want? What's important to you? What are your boundaries and what are your values? And don't kick them to the curb just to please your guy. Because at the end of the day, if you're okay with yourself, like, and accepting of who you are as a person, that's the main thing that matters. Is that you're okay with who you are and accepting who you are as a person and being welcoming to that. Because once you start being like really okay with who you are, that's when how he behaves or she behaves doesn't impact you as much, because you know what's important to you. You know what your values are and what your boundaries are and the behaviors that you will and won't put up with. Hence, your self-respect is really there.
There's a common theme that I think we're getting to now, and it's great to see. 'Cause we've touched on, you've clearly done some work on yourself. I've done a lot of work on myself. I've done a lot of work on my relationship, and it's being able to accept who you are, to show up in a relationship and get into a relationship without wearing a mask. And I think a lot, and then moving forward in that relationship and being open to other people and listening and communicating, all of these skills we have to master that no one ever told us about. But essentially what it comes down to is being able to love yourself first, feeling good enough, and then taking who you are and standing there with the superhero pose, being confident, because that's really attractive, and respecting yourself, and then bringing that into a relationship. And it's great to hear that coming out of you, Tasha. That's what I'm getting.
Yeah. And one other thing is, I'm finding with myself that's important, is being courageous. It takes a lot of courage to open yourself up to somebody. Like, that's being courageous, and you're not knowing how you're going to be received, or the feedback that you're going to get, or the response you're going to get. So that's a lot of courage. It does take a lot of courage to really say, well, this is who I am. This is what I'm about. This is what I'm interested. This is the authentic, real me. That takes courage. It really does. Even the baby steps of relationships and dating, even, to be courageous and say, well, this is who I am. These are the things that I'm interested in. That in itself even just takes courage.
100%.
Like, it's really daunting for some people, particularly if their confidence, everyone has different levels of confidence and self-awareness. And if that's a bit, they've been hurt before, so they're not really sure and they're a bit worried, that takes courage to just say, well, hey, this is where I am. This is where I want. I do like you, but I'm not ready for anything serious. Or, can we slow things down? Or what are your thoughts on relationships? What are your perspectives about relationships? What does connection mean to you? Even saying those vulnerable things takes a lot of courage. Like, for women, it's courageous. So it's really, like, for men, wow, my God, that is courage.
There's probably an objection to I was going to say there's probably an objection to being yourself, because you might in your brain go, oh, people won't accept me. People won't like who I really am. But, there's how many people in the world? 7 billion?
Oh, yeah. It's like...
there's chances are there's people out there who believe in the same things as you, who share the same values as you, who want the same things as you. They're out there. But instead, there's the easy path, right? The easy path. Oh, this might be the one, good looking, or she's good looking, and she's got this hot body, or whatever it is they have going on. You take the easy route. And my coach always says to me, when you do what is easy, life is hard. When you do what is hard, life is easy.
Yep.
So
absolutely.
true.
So true. So
Brilliant.
true.
Love it. So Tasha, obviously we've been talking now for about 45 minutes about all of these topics, and clearly you're an expert at what you do. You work with people on a regular basis in your relationship coaching business. And tell me a little bit more about what you do, what you can offer people, how they can, how if they were to work with you, what that would look like for them. Just jump into that for us and share a little bit.
Okay, so how that will work for them is really creating awareness. A lot of it is about creating awareness of what they want, where their limiting beliefs stem from, what are their fears, and changing those beliefs around themselves and how they perceive life. One of my packages for Relationship Rescue Kit, for an example, really nuts down their values. Like, we really break down what's important to them, their values, their frustrations with their partner, like what's frustrating you the most at the moment, how that impacts you, learning your love language, like there's a quiz of your love language and discovering what's yours. Everyone everyone demonstrates love in a different way. So some it could be quality time, some it could be acts of service or gifts or physical touch. It all depends, really. And so we dive down deep into that as well and discover your love language and really work about how you can express love to your partner, or how you can say to your partner, well, this, I feel love when you do X, Y, Z. And one thing I say to women, well, how do you know your partner loves you without him saying it? So for an example would be, he touches me on the shoulder and that's how I know he loves me. Just that physical touch. He doesn't even need to say anything to her. That's how she knows that he loves her.
I know that
so
one.
that's part
That's
of
my
the
girlfriend.
work that I do. And again, seeing things on a guy's perspective, learning how to communicate the way men do, and understanding that they don't communicate the same way as us women. Really getting him, like seeing him for who he is. That's another thing that I work with as well.
I would say that the rescue kit is the one I'd want. if I was going through a crappy relationship, the rescue kit is what I'd want, because it's based on values, frustrations.
Values, frustrations, you believe what's important to you. Like you list down your values and then you really circle the top 5. So what is really important to you? Goals is something you achieve. A values is something that stands by you day to day for the rest of your life. So it could be honesty, compassion, intimacy, spontaneity. So you're really nutting down your values in the relationship rescue kit and you're in alignment with them. Is your relationship in line with your values? So like you can only control what you bring into a relationship. You can't control how your partner behaves or what they bring in, only yourself. You can only control what you bring into a relationship as well. So we work around that with the rescue kit a lot.
I'll tie that into something, because I want to prove what you've just said. If you're underestimating the power of values, my top value is authenticity. And you heard me share earlier about how I show up authentically me. You've seen me having a little bit of fun on camera today. And I talked about my girlfriend and the way she showed up and how she was dancing. She was fully self-expressed. She was the epitome of authenticity in that moment when I first saw her. And that to me, like, this alignment was so powerful. And there's a number of other values that we're aligning. Sometimes different priorities, but fun is one. You've probably got that too. And when you get this, you know exactly what Tasha's saying. It's super, super powerful. And when you get this right before a relationship, or you understand it within your existing relationship, then you can start to understand how you can move forward with that relationship.
Yeah. So, like, there's nothing wrong with being in a relationship and, you know, starting to become aware of it while you're in a current relationship, because then you can align yourself with your values. Your partner can learn more about you, saying, well, hey, this is important to you. For me, it's honesty, it's intimacy, it's loyalty and trust. Like I'm big on those 4. So if I'm honest with whoever I'm dating at the time, this is what I am and this is what I want, and demonstrating it. Like with men, the main word with men that they trust on is action. If he sees a woman acting in line with her values and who she is, he can trust that, because the main language men hear is action. That's how they connect with the world. That's how they relate with their buddies, is through acting.
It's all about the action, Tasha.
So like if he sees a woman confident, happy, she knows what she wants, she's driven by her career, he can sit back and think, hey, well, she's not going to hold me back. I'll be allowed to be my own self and, you know, pursue areas in my life and pursue my goals without being controlled. You know, he encourages him to do more in his own life as well. So that's a really good alignment too, the way I look at it as well. You know, allowing each other to still be yourselves is a big thing for me too. Like, I'm happy to be with someone, but I still need to be able to be myself. I still want him to be himself and have his own goals and his own passion and his own career and things that he wants to achieve. And I'm the same.
I think we're getting
the alignment, the alignment and the authenticity and being the real you comes down to that as well. And it's exciting. Like, you don't need to be serious all the time. Have fun together, you know, spoil each other, be romantic, be spontaneous, play like kids. Like, it doesn't need to be serious all the time, because to me, There's enough drama going on in the world without you having to be serious without you having to be serious in your relationship all the time. Like, lighten up, have fun, be kids, enjoy each other's company, build that bond around being relaxing and really exploring who this guy is. I don't know, for me, exploring who this person is kind of sexy, and it's kind of, I don't know, energy driven, meaning even curiosity, like, who is this person?
It's all part of the adventure, right?
Yeah, it's part of the adventure. It's part of the right. Exactly, you hit the nail on the head. Relationships are a journey, not a destination. Life's a journey, not a destination. It's not about who gets married first or how many times you've been married or where you go first. It's your own little journey. Like, it's not a competition. That's a big thing I see in society, is they put a competition on everything. Whether it's your lifestyle, your income, your relationship, your children, whatever, the clothes you wear even, everything seems to be a competition, and relationships aren't like that. Like, take the weight off your shoulders. It's not a competition.
Is that social media?
Oh, probably. Yeah, social media would have a bit to play in that too, I think.
Yeah, I think so, for sure. I mean, everybody lives the perfect life, right? And just because you see it on social media doesn't mean it's true. And I have this, even though like a lot of the work I do in marketing is social media orientated, I kind of hate it because it's so fake and inauthentic, and it's not a true reflection of what life actually is. I mean, if you looked at some people's profiles, they live this rock and roll lifestyle. Like, oh my God, they are like jumping out of a plane every day. They're bungee jumping every day. They're, you know, I don't know. I'm not even going to go into it. But what you see on social media isn't really true. And, you know, your relationship is your relationship. And it's important that you're present in that relationship. You live the adventure and you do it together, whatever that may look like for you. So I'm going to wrap this up, Tasha. If people want to get in touch with you, what is the best way for them to do that?
Either connect with me on Facebook, or you can connect with me through my website, which is tashahughesonline.com.
Awesome.
And there you'll find articles that I've written. One of them is how to speak your child's love language, 7 qualities that men desire in women, and 6 secrets on how to build a better sex life is another one that I've written as well. And you'll also get a free copy of my ebook, 10 Key Secrets to Building a Healthy, Loving, and Supportive Relationship. So you can jump on my website, download that, have a read through, see what you think. I'm happy for feedback as well, whether it's helpful or not.
Good stuff. I'm going to be placing all of Tasha's links in the description to this video. So if you want to go and check them out, make sure you just head over to the description so you can actually download them. Tasha, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Great conversation as always. And yeah, thanks guys. And I look forward to speaking to you soon.
Bye. Thank you for having me.